type of real estate investment and you're wondering what the heck that could be or if it could make you any money, well, if you've wondered both of those two things, you're in absolutely the right place, because tonight's special guest is Darcy Marhler, and he is going to share how he pivoted from former rental property investor owning 92 properties, 236 stores, and $44 million in real estate to developing buildings or building development. If you're new to Alberta Landlords Watch, I'm your co-host, Nelda Schulte, just like the backwards sign shows here. And I am joined by my partner in crime, Gil Donkersgood. He's visiting from BC. And we both own rental properties in Alberta and BC, and we're here to share information with do-it-yourself landlords and for property and real estate investors who are looking for information and services. We're here to help you out to shorten your searching space and to hopefully help you cut some corners so that you can make more money and make fewer mistakes that cost you money. My website, neldaschulte.com, offers property investors a way to self-manage with free resources and very reasonably priced resources. And if you want all the information in one place at one time, buy my nifty little book, The Canadian Landlord's Handbook. It's available on Amazon.ca. And it's got absolutely everything that I talk about on my website in a really nice, concise order you can refer back to time and time again and give away as gifts. You might want to buy dozens of them to give away for Christmas gifts. Just saying, it's a fantastic present. Anyway, enough about me. I'd like to welcome Darcy. So welcome, Darcy.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. We're just going to jump right in and start asking you some questions.
Sure.
Really here. So, we don't play good cop, bad cop, as we mentioned earlier to you. We're both bad cops, so we're both going to be grilling you. So, just suck it up. The first question is, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because you've got kind of an interesting background that, maybe a lot of people aspire to, and now you're like, why would you throw all that away?
Yeah, so I was a computer guy, and I've had the bug to be in real estate since I was like 15, which was a long time ago. So finally, around 2001, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go full-time real estate. So I did a few flips and a couple of rentals, and then that led to other things like small development, new construction. So since 2001, as you said, I've owned 240 units, close to 1,000 tenants. And I was instrumental in getting the new racetrack here, the horse tracking casino built in Calgary. I've done everything, flips and burrs and short and long-term rentals, built 45 or 46 homes, including multifamily. So I've done kind of a little bit of everything. And I just, to be honest, I hated it. I just wasn't having any fun at all. So I really, really, really hated being a landlord. Like, even though I had property management, like, I hated it. And kind of the projects, the flips and the condo conversions, I just got tired of going to Rona. I was literally at Rona every weekday for like 18 years.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
I just got bored. And so, I was really depressed. This is 2018, 2019. We're in the middle of a recession and nothing's making money, which added to the depression. So yeah, I just sold everything. I'm right out. And I know that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have lots of doors for your retirement and legacy for the kids and all that stuff, but nobody ever asks the question, well, what if you don't enjoy it? Like, what if you don't like it?
What if you don't have kids?
Yeah. So I said, no, I'm gonna focus on just the parts that I liked, right? Which was being creative, being new, learning stuff and building and then watching things grow from the ground up, as opposed to kind of being limited to an existing 1930s house with 7-foot ceilings and 9x9 bedrooms and whatnot. So I just decided to go with new. I've done a bunch of nasty and I've done a bunch of new, and new is much better. Trust me.
Nasty and new. So how do you define real estate development?
So there's 3 kinds to it. So basically it's getting the paperwork, the permitting to do what you want to do. Let's say you want to knock down an older house and build a 4-plex. So how are you going to do that on the permit side? It's called upzoning, changing zoning or density or entitlement. Then there's the land preparation, where you're getting land ready for a builder. So I always say, out with the old, in with the new. Mm-hmm. So you've got that old house there. Obviously, it's got to come down, driveways, sidewalks, maybe a fence, some trees. Get it back to neutral, in with the new. So that's maybe a retaining wall, probably utilities in the ground. And then finally, the last bit, the actual construction, that's where we take a service lot and build something beautiful on it.
Nothing
So,
wrong with that.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of all those steps.
So, what type of investor gets into real estate development?
Me, like I wrote my course for me. So yeah, you're tired. You're tired of tenants and tired of hoarders and tired of, in other places they've got really, really bad landlord tenant laws, and they came up with this thing called cash for keys, where you're basically just paying your tenants to
Yeah.
bugger off, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're that person. You're bored, like I was, right? Like you're just, after you've done your sixth or seventh flip, they're all the same after that, right? So you're bored or you're frustrated. You're an investor that's, nothing seems to be working anymore. You can't cash flow positively a single family home. Everybody's going to multifamily, but the dirty secret there is there's nothing to buy. Airbnb is getting harder. The BRRRR strategy is harder to refinance. So yeah, you're tired, you're bored, you're frustrated, you're kind of feeling stuck with the traditional flips and rentals.
I'm thinking about all the times that we had the Christmas Eve phone call that something was broken to be able to escape.
I always used to dread Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve and virtually every holiday or long weekend, because most people really look forward to those. When we had a property management business, I dreaded them because invariably you would get the calls. My hot water tank stopped working. My furnace stopped working. Well, you can't. Yeah. It's always the coldest time of the year during New Year's or Christmas. And that's when, of course, their hot water tank or their furnace stops working and you have to deal with it. And then if you don't have or if the people that we represented didn't have a service like Action Furnace or whatever, then you had to find whatever plumber in town was not busy, charging through the nose.
Yes.
And then the landlords were mad at you. The tenants were always mad at you because it was your fault that everything went kablooey on New Year's Eve.
Yeah. So I certainly understand that.
Oh my gosh, yes, we certainly understand where you're coming from.
I was so the great thing about having flat roofed apartment buildings is you find out if your roof leaks in the spring when the snow melts, right? So one time I was in Mexico on vacation, and I'm not joking. I had stuff before I sold. I had apartments all over Alberta. Monday I got a call and the roof leaked in one building. Tuesday I got a call, boiler went. Wednesday I got a call, hot water tank went on all different buildings. And then Thursday I got a call, another roof leak. Friday I was like Pavlov's dog, just kind of shaking.
I know, you get scared of the
phone ring again, right? So, yeah.
That's how we used to feel every time the phone would ring Christmas or New Year's. Most people were like, "Oh, it's Aunt Bessie calling to wish me," and my stomach would be in a big knot. I'd be like, "Oh, what is it? What disaster?" And then we had a friend who managed mixed residential, and he always wanted us to help out when he was gone on vacation. And he'd say, "Oh, don't worry, this building hasn't had an issue for 5 years." But I think every year that we managed it over Christmas break, the boiler went, the furnace went. And this was in a huge complex. We're like, "Oh, goody." You have to go out on site, let people in. It's like, there goes your vacation. Everyone's enjoying a nice dinner, but you.
Yeah. So why don't more investors get into real estate development?
I think most don't even think of it as an option. All we're taught really is flips and rentals, right? How to take an existing building and renovate it enough to flip it or to keep it as a rental, maybe Airbnb or something, right? So most people don't even know it's there. And then if you do know about it or think about it, most people think it's just kind of for the big corporations, buying 400 acres on the outskirts of town and building 1,000 doors. I can't do that. Or the developers inside town that are tearing down 5 or 6 houses and building a 100-unit behemoth kind of thing. So I think it's just fear. It takes too long, takes too much money. You need construction experience. Just the big boys are doing it. Doesn't work in this economy. Like all kinds of excuses for why people don't get into it.
But there's a learning curve with everything. I mean, you don't just sort of jump into it and off you go. I know I didn't ask you this for this question, but what's the learning curve for building development?
A lot quicker, actually. So with a rental or a flip, your work kind of starts the day you take the keys, because now I got to make the renovations. So now I'm busy, right? It's kind of the opposite here. You need some learning up front. What is zoning and density? What is highest and best use? We hear these terms. If we flip our thinking that the value is not in the building, like we're taught all the time, but actually in the land. Okay, well, how do you increase the value of land? Right? So you got to learn some of that. Mm-hmm. It is a big deal where you invest. municipalities have different rules, and it could be 2 to 3 months to get your permit here. It could be 2 years over here, right? So there's some education you need, but the actual execution, once you find a place that an old house to tear down that's going to work for a fourplex, or a little bit of lot assembly, 2 50-foot lots together, maybe we can join those together, something like that. At that point, your team, your engineer, your architect, your planner, they're going to do the back and forth with the city. If you're actually going to tear down the old house and build something, then your team's doing that as well, right? So I find it much more, it's a great return on time, because typically your returns are better monetarily, and much less of your time is taken, because we're going to tear down that house.
I have a friend who insists on that, because when you build a house, you have an immediate substantial increase, as opposed to when you're investing just buy and hold. It's a smaller return over time. So I get that. He says you get all the lift at the very start. That's his phrasing.
Yeah, no, it's a very good return on time, and we don't talk about that enough. We're always return on investment, number of doors. That's what we always talk about. Nobody ever talks about your time and how valuable that is. And
really, there is a very steep learning curve with being getting myself out of business here. There's a very steep learning curve as a landlord.
Right.
There are really a lot of things to learn. I still remember a woman calling me and saying, I just want to rent out my place until I'm going to go away for a year or something. I don't really want to be a landlord. I said, well, if you're renting it out, you are a landlord. And at the time she said, well, how much would it cost me to pay you to do it for me? And so I said, well, your fees. And she's like, oh, what if I do it myself? Well, what do I need to do? So I kind of gave her a list, and she said, holy shit. I said, well, that's what you pay for.
Yeah.
If you hire somebody, if they do it correctly. So
I always say, do it once or twice yourself to figure out how hard it is, and then
hand it over. But
even then, I've never kind of been real thrilled with the property managers that I've had either. So I wouldn't.
No, neither have I. I've got stories about that too, which I don't care to share right now.
Yeah.
So what types of projects could regular investors get involved in? Like, do they need millions of dollars to get started?
No. So my first one, I had a 1950s 1,000 square foot house that I was going to flip. And then the person next to me passed away. Excuse me. So I bought that house off the estate. So now I had kind of 2 really nice pie lots. I moved them off. I didn't even destroy them. Somebody bought them. Somebody paid me money to take them away, which I thought was cool. And then I split those 2 lots into 4. I made sure all 4 lots were serviced. 2 of them already were, because they went to the old house. And then I built 2 single family homes and a duplex. And that was I've done like 4 flips and a couple of rentals. So, I'm sure I'm right where most of your viewers are in terms of, so that's very, very doable for a first time. And even if you do half of that, you've got 1 unit, knock it down. Like I said, build a triplex, build a fourplex. That's very, very, very doable first time.
So, I guess every case is different though in terms of money, how much it would cost.
Okay. So basically, what I really like about, we kind of got to lose a lot of the preconceived notions we take from the flip and rental world. There, it's all about JV partner. I need a money partner. And the other thing is that we always, like I said, the values in the building, not the land. But we also don't have very many options when it comes to seller financing in the flip and rental world, because I need the seller to leave. I got to renovate his place, right? So there's vendor take back, second mortgage is about all I got, right? Agreements for sale sometimes. Here, you've got a whole bunch of opportunities, because, here in Alberta, we're pretty lucky. The time it takes to get approvals and stuff is fairly short compared to everywhere else. Maybe 3 to 4, 5 months in Edmonton, maybe 6, 7 months here in Calgary. And so I'm much happier to have the seller stay, right? And so you've got this option of seller financing. Can you partner with the seller? Mr. Seller, instead of kind of lowball you like a wholesaler would, or like most landlords or flippers, I need to get that at a discount. What if I can give you your fair market value, but I need time? So at the end of that 8 months, let's say, I'll have changed the zoning and density to allow something to happen. I'll sell it to a builder, and we'll come to some percentage split on the profits there, and I don't end up having to come up with a lot of money, right? All I need is city permits and some engineering in that, right? So again, not always possible, but if it is, and it's going to be more and more common, I think, going forward, I'm really confident that this is a significant way to get in without a lot of money.
Yeah.
I teach 11 different ways to do that, to control the land without actually buying it.
Okay.
So it's basically here in Alberta, you're probably 25 or 50,000 if you can do that. If you can't, if you still have to buy the original old house, then it's no different than a flip or a rental, right? If you can afford to buy it for a flip, you can afford to buy it for this kind of strategy as well.
Okay, so different strategies depending on how much you can come in with. Then.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So the next question is about micro strategies. So why don't we just start with what a micro strategy is?
Yeah. So if we think that the macro strategies in real estate are fix and flips, rentals, land development, new construction, a micro strategy of flips and rentals would be longer short-term rentals, Airbnb, rent-to-own, condo conversions, right? Well, certainly land development, new construction, you can't dive down further there, but yes, you can, right? So what if you just got the zoning and permitting, upzoning it's called, changed so that you can tear down that old house and build a fourplex? You don't even have to do work on site. You can just do the paperwork, which is basically just changing the information about that property down at City Hall, the database there, and you can sell that to a builder. That's a micro strategy. The next step would be maybe I get my architect to design that fourplex, get the building permit approved. Well, now I've got a shovel-ready package that I can sell to a builder. And if that house is empty, they can literally start work the next day. Maybe I can knock on the next door neighbors and get that house too, like I did. So now I've got maybe 100 feet, right? Maybe I can split that into 425s or 5 20-foot lots and sell that. Or maybe I amalgamate them and I can do some townhouses, or I can do an apartment building. What if I find one that's 80 feet wide? What can I do with that, right? So that's kind of the Upworks entitlement stage, where I don't even have to do any work on site. I can just kind of move paper. Land preparation we talked about. So that's full-blown land, raw land development. That's probably what most people think when they think of this. Buying 5, 10, 20 acres, splitting it into smaller sections, make sure each one's serviced. You build an internal road, you got some street lights and some sidewalks, and you sell that to a builder. If we take that down to our size, though, as regular builders, that just that old house, I can knock down that old house, split the lot into, make sure both sides are serviced, and I can sell those 2 service lots now to a builder. I can sell it to 2 young couples that want to build their own. So there's lots of different ways to profit. And then on the new construction, maybe, I want to knock down the house and I want to build that fourplex too. So what's great about it is, those are all different micro strategies, and there's several more that I teach. So 2 things. One is it gives me more tools in my toolbox if I'm an investor, right? So right now as a landlord or flipper, I'm going to go to that old house and all I can do is fix it up enough to rent it, sell it, or turn it into an Airbnb, right? Now there's literally like 20 different tools when you come up on that old house, which is really powerful in bad economies or this isn't going to work, that's not going to work. Oh, but this strategy is a really good option here, right? So
there are lots of different creative strategies that
Yeah.
you can use, or maybe you can combine them once you know what
Yeah.
they are. Sort of like to me, it's like learning music. You have to learn the theory and the counterpoint before you can start composing. So yes, then you can break the rules or not break the rules, but you can shift and move the rules around because you understand the structure.
Right. And the other benefit too is that you can just do a piece of it. So there's multiple entry strategies or multiple entry points and multiple exit points, right? With a flip, I have to finish. I can't sell a flip halfway in the middle and expect to make any money.
Right.
Here, I don't have to, right? Let's say there's a project from green grass all the way to being finished. I can just buy the land. Somebody else has done the work here. I value add my piece here, and I sell it to somebody else. And that lets you get in and out quick, which is great for bad economies, but it also lets you specialize, right? Like what are you going to enjoy, right? We don't talk about that, right? We kind of just want people to pick a strategy. You're going to do flips or rentals. Again, what if you don't like that? Well, you can say, I really like getting the land ready. I don't want to build the house, but I want to do this. Or maybe I just want to, make a $50,000 profit in 6 months by changing the zoning and density and move on to the next one, right? So you get, I call it moving the needle. You just kind of pick the little piece you want in the whole grand scheme. Very, very unique.
That's great. That is great because once you own a house, if you're renting it, you've got a whole package of things that you need to do.
Right.
You can't sort of choose a little bit.
Well, that's really helped me with my. I hate this whole thing, kind of. No, actually, now you can pick and choose what you like. You can actually have fun while you invest, which is a strange concept a lot of the time.
What a concept, enjoying your life.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that?
I suppose even if you're in enough communities, if you're in a community where dealing with the city sucks for trying to do zoning and that sort of thing, then in that city maybe you don't go to the zoning, you get someone else to do that, and you do the utilities into the ground or something like
or maybe you're in a place where it just is anti-development, right? So, but 10 minutes up the road is a different city, a different town, could be totally different here. Or even in Calgary and Edmonton are very pro-development, but not every neighborhood is, right? So, okay, well, I just won't invest there. I'll go invest in one of these other communities where there's lots of activity, lots of precedent. We look for precedent. Are other people trying to do what we're trying to do? So it makes it easier.
Yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel or like push a rope uphill.
Yeah.
So what are some examples of the kinds of profits that are available in development? You mentioned a little bit about you could do a section and make $50,000 in 6 years.
So let's look at just kind of moving the paper. I have a couple of students in my classes. They made $135,000 in 2.5 months just by doing that.
That's great.
One of my larger land development projects, I was offered, after I just changed the zoning and the density, I was offered a $400,000 profit. I could have just sold then. Foolishly, I decided to continue on, but that's kind of the profit. There's all kinds of other examples. If I just, I'll tell you another one. So 6 students in my course, and I'm not going to say this is normal, but this is an example. They went ahead and they bought a duplex and a fourplex here just by Chinook Mall in Calgary. Mm-hmm. They then went ahead and bought the next door neighbor, which had a fourplex, and another fourplex next to that, surrounded by kind of tall 17-story towers. They're in the process of amalgamating those 4 projects or 4 properties into one, and getting approval on paper to have a 24-story tower.
I saw that video. That's fantastic.
So there's like 3 or 4 months left to go, but the city's all over it because there's literally
housing shortage, and this is an opportunity to really fill that. They're looking to make $1.5 million profit from basically 16 months worth of work. So again, not typical, but it's you can get that can happen. I got another. I've got a Facebook group closed for the group, and then I've got an open Facebook group. Somebody there had a win of $600,000 in 6 months in Ontario. So I mean, Darcy, can you make profits flipping paper? Yeah. So, and then land development, like I said, the $400,000 or $1 million. When I got my villas to a state where all the pipe was in the ground and everything from the land development stage is ready, I could have made $1 million there. I was actually offered that much, and then I decided to build. But so there's again, it's typically much, not always, but significantly higher than your average flip usually. And like I said, your team's going to do most of the work. So. Well, and even rental properties, how long would it take you to make $1 million in rental properties? When you look at your profit margin and the amount of work you're putting in on a monthly or weekly basis, sometimes daily, depending on what problems there are. Yeah.
I always found as a landlord, especially here in Alberta, I couldn't really count on appreciation. A lot of the times, you can't count on cash flow half the time. You really it's the tenants paying down your mortgage over a number of years is where the kind of profit comes from, which takes. That's why we have 8 or 10 year JV agreements with partners to.
Yeah.
So significantly longer time.
Why is this important now in 2023? Building development. Because
there's a real housing crisis, which I'm sure you're all heard of, and massive immigration coming. So where's everybody going to live? So as a result, we're seeing basically unprecedented in my 20 years. We're seeing all 3 levels of government kind of work together to make it better. Now, sometimes, it's government, so sometimes it's 1.5 steps forward and 1 step back, but it's moving definitely in the right direction. Edmonton is I've got students all over North America. I talk to people all over North America. Edmonton's the most aggressive municipality in North America now for approving density. It's almost rubber stamped if you kind of go with an application for higher zoning. It's almost not 100% guaranteed, but it's very
close.
yeah. And same here in Calgary. They're very pro too. So you've got all this demand for lots. You've got this really massive swing between demand and supply. And with any business, if you can meet the demand, you can make a profit, right? So it's basically, I think it's the beginning of a wave. I think this is the next big thing in real estate investing, because all the other stuff is, like I said at the beginning, it's kind of really hard. It's harder to get cash flow and all that stuff. So for all these reasons, I don't know if you probably noticed this too with your younger renter base. They don't want old anymore. Like nobody really wants to move into that 1950s building, right? Everybody wants new. So for all these reasons, you're kind of going to see a lot of these older homes come down to replace by something with higher density and higher inventory. It's getting harder and harder to insure really, really old buildings, or we're getting mortgages for them. So lots of things are kind of coming to a head.
Yeah. Older buildings are pretty insulated and they're drafty and they're just not as fun. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Sewage breaks, sewage pipes break, all the fun stuff. Yeah.
There's asbestos in there somewhere. So.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
I used to be fix it up guy. Now I'm tear it down guy. Let's just say that.
So, what are typical costs of doing these kinds of developments?
So basically, if you can partner with the seller, you're basically looking at permits, permitting fees, and engineering, and across, very reasonable. I used to bitch like crazy about Calgary and Edmonton when I was limiting myself to Alberta, but now that I'm talking to other people all over it, like we got it pretty good here. So here you're looking at those kind of numbers. If you can afford to buy it as a rental or a flip, you can afford to do this. If you're going to get into it where you've got to buy the house and now you're going to actually do the work on site, you're not just flipping paper, then it can go up depending on how much land you got, what you're trying to build. It can go into the but there's some good programs out there though, as far as, like I said, the government's trying to get involved and help. So CMHC has a program called MLI Select for new construction. If you're trying to build something with 5 units or more, they'll let you get up to 95% loan to cost.
Really?
You have to jump through some hoops. Something like 30% of your new units have to be lower income. You've got to be environmentally friendly, and there's some rules there. And then you've got to have accessibility for disabled. So it's kind of a point system to start at 75% and potentially go up to 95. Talking to some brokers, they're averaging about 87% is what I'm hearing, but still that's
really high. Yeah,
remarkable
that's fantastic.
compared to
saves you a ton of money. And then when you're done, here's the beautiful part to it. Once you're approved at the beginning, you can automatically port that to a 50-year amortized mortgage at the end. The reason, 50. So typically with these older buildings, you're maybe 20 years at best to get it, because so old, right? Like they're not gonna insure it for that long because everything's brand new. 50 years. The idea from the government is that, well, they need the numbers, they need housing. So if they give you a 50-year, the monthly mortgage costs will be less, which means you don't have to charge as much as a landlord, which means that you can help the lower income crowd better. So that's kind of the win-win they're trying to set up between the federal government and the developers. So it's been a massive success, this program. It came out last February, a year ago. So it's a game changer as far as getting stuff built.
Yeah.
Because that was part of the problem too for years here, especially in Alberta. It didn't make sense. The cost to custom build an apartment didn't make sense, right? So everything was being condoed. So that brought down the supply of rental units. So it was kind of something they had to do to get out of it.
Well, good.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, what you saw for apartment buildings was stuff that looked like it should be condemned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that's all we know, right? That's all we're taught. We got to fix that up. That's all I know. That's all I've been taught for 40 years with the real estate education. Well, flips and rentals. So let's, I'm not talking about tearing down, things that are historically or architecturally, valuable, but 98% of the stuff that's out there isn't. It's just old crap. Let's be honest. So it can come down.
So I always think it's whatever you've been taught, whatever you've been educated in is what you end up doing. Like our education system is geared towards getting a job
Yep.
and working as an employee.
Yep.
It's not geared towards being an entrepreneur or an
Right.
investor or anything else. So that's what people know. So that's what they do. So anything that's sort of outside of that is scary, of course.
Yep.
And if you don't know anybody who does something outside of getting a job, if they haven't started their own business or whatever, then the whole thing is pretty scary.
Yes.
I remember years ago talking to a boyfriend and asking him how he managed to get into business because he had owned all these shops. And he said, well, my whole family they owned businesses, and my parents did and my siblings did. And I said, I never knew anyone who owned a shop. Like all my family were teachers and nurses and hospital workers. And, so that's kind of what I saw. And I thought, oh, that's what people do.
Yeah.
And that's what he saw and that's what he did. So, yeah. But you keep your mind open and you keep your ear to the ground. There are different ways to make money, different ways to invest.
I come from 300 or 400 years of farmers. So there you go. So.
I do as well.
You've broken the chain. Okay.
And I spent enough time up to my knees in manure. I'm happy to break the chain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no kidding.
So we've been talking about the fears that people have in getting into this. How do we overcome those fears?
That's where the micro strategies really come into play. Because again, you're in and out quick. You can just pick the part you want. So the fear of the economy, does it work right now? Again, you're in and out quick. If you're in kind of a rougher time, we see lots of those in Alberta. You kind of learn, okay, that's what Alberta's taught me is get in and out quick. And these different strategies are great for that. It's just for the big guys. Well, again, if we just come down to one old house on one city lot as regular real estate investors, we can do that. Those strategies that I talked about again. You need construction experience. No, because your team, your civil engineer, your planner, architect, they're going to go back and forth with the city. And then you're going to hire a developer, hire a builder to physically do the work on site. We're going to back up a sec and step, and we're going to think like investors, right? How do I make sure I'm in the right place? What does that city want and need? Treat it like a business, right? What can my product be? My product either is a piece of paper, a service lot, or a finished product, right? So, you can do this because your team's going to do the technical work. It takes too long, again, in and out quick, costs too much money. We've explained a few ways where you can get in for a lot less money than you might think. So a lot of these micro strategies open up, having 20 tools in your toolbox versus 3 makes a big difference for how you can attack things in different situations and be really flexible.
That's good.
Yeah, I like it too, and I like the creativity. And I'm a person who likes to start projects. I don't necessarily like to maintain them, but I like to start them. So I'm kind of reconsidering my options at this stage of the game.
Again, that was me, right? Like I said, I designed this for myself. I like a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that's why landlording, other than the tenants, I never liked that open-endedness of rentals either, right? So
yeah, never ending. Yes,
I like the project.
Understood. I think you probably covered this question already. In Alberta in general and Edmonton specifically, there are places that we can do this. And you mentioned that can you give us some costs for what paperwork would cost to do in or
Like to rezone
permits?
something?
Yeah, to rezone in Alberta as opposed to, let's say, Ontario or someplace that isn't really friendly to building.
So let's say I'm going to do that fourplex. The last time I checked here in Calgary, it was $100 per. There's other costs involved, but I'll just give you one. So every municipality charges so much per new unit. That's $100 per new unit, so $400. I believe it's Kitchener, Ontario charges $12,000 per unit.
Oh, really?
And Barrie, Ontario, I believe is around $40,000 per unit.
Oh,
so not only is it important for time, which municipality you pick, but also fees, right? Like that's a huge deal.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
That is amazing. But
Do you have any idea? I'm just curious for personal reasons.
BC?
How much Victoria would cost?
I don't know, but here's the story I tell about you got it, some are 2 months, some are 2 years. So Langford on the island, I talked Vancouver Island. So Langford's like 2 to 3 months to get your approval.
Yeah.
Qualicum and Qualicum's about 4 months, 6 months in there. Nanaimo's 8 months. There's Souk and East Souk, which are a year and a half kind of thing. And then Victoria's like 2 years. So, like I said, you can just drive half an hour up the road. If you don't like the way things are here, I'll just go over there. So
Well, and if you go to Langford, you can see how modern, like it's been built. It's just been so well done. The fact that they've done this they've been developer friendly, and so a lot of companies, a lot of residents have moved into there. It's been a great formula for success.
Yes.
And maybe for sex too.
Maybe.
And then you kind of look at that, and you look at city council in Victoria, and you like, aren't you?
Duh.
and Souk, which is where I am.
I don't know. I've been reading about the housing shortage for years and years, and reading more articles about. And I just think, does the government not understand that if they don't make things easy for us to invest and to build and to landlord, that there's going to be an even worse housing shortage? Do they not get this?
Yeah.
Some places do, and some places don't.
And on the island, people are sleeping in their cars because there's not enough housing.
So what happens is, this is a municipal thing, right? Like, it's municipalities that have the 10, 20, 50-year plans, and residential is going to be here and industrial is going to be there. And if you want to change that, here's the application, right? So you had little mini fiefdoms across the country. This is the only place in my life where I get to be important, so I'm gonna be strong here, right? And that's where you got the 2 months or the 2 years. What's happening now, because of the housing crisis, is now provincial politicians are getting their butts chewed out. Federal politicians are getting their butts chewed out. So now they're sitting there saying, okay, we're going to come down. So again, we've always had things pretty good in Alberta. We don't have a rent control or anything like that. For example, in BC, though, the BC government is putting a lot of pressure on these municipalities to say, get your butts, get it together. So their tact is more, let's just make everything consistent. So every municipality, the application process should be the same. And to be honest, a lot of that is just getting rid of the NIMBY crowd, the not in my backyard complainers that take up so much time. So if it's going to take 6 months, at least it's 6 months everywhere. Ontario has kind of gone the other way, where they're saying, they passed the bill 23 here a little bit ago. We're basically saying every lot in the province can have 3 units on it, and the municipality can't talk back. They can't say.
BC did something similar with 2 units.
Yeah. Victoria's thinking. Even Victoria was surprised that they were thinking about that same kind of 3-unit model. So again, it's getting better, right? And then you got the federal government having programs that they're giving young kids money to help buy. Well, that just helps the demand. Again, like I said, 1.5 step forward and 1 step back. Yeah. But then they come around and do the CMHC thing to really help the build. So again, there's a lot of, it's never been better. 20 years when I started, it was easy, but in the last few years, it's never been better, and it's going to get better. It's better today than it was a year ago. Next year will be better than now. 5 years from now, it'll be better yet. So I really am optimistic that a lot of stuff is changing, and for the better, because of the pressure now that's coming from above that was never there before.
That's very
well. I'm happy to hear some good news about real estate.
Well, I'm happy to hear good news about municipalities.
Or about anything.
And you're starting to see that, all across North America. For example, Oregon and California, in a lot of places there, if you come forward with an application for development, you can't do single-family homes anymore. You have to do a minimum of duplexes. So, different states and provinces are doing it different ways. But again, it's all kind of positive that this is what we need. We need more housing. So this idea that we kind of have as Canadians, that I want a single-family home, and once I get my single-family home, I'm going to lock the door because I want my neighborhood to never change. I love my neighborhood exactly the way it is. Sorry, too bad, so sad. You're going to have to, especially in the older neighborhoods, you're going to have to see some new higher density buildings.
Well, if you think about Vancouver, where are you going to build? Because it's so, you can't really expand it much, so you have to make it tighter, more.
Yeah. So, so knock down that 1910 piece of crap, and let's, even if it is only a 25-foot lot, well, you can still maybe put a 3-story there. Mm-hmm. Or 2 units in a suited basement, or a carriage house in the back, a laneway house in the back. So lots of things are coming up in that world too. Modular is coming up as a really prefab, as ways to kind of really solve that problem too. So there's a lot of optimism, a lot of good things happening.
Tiny houses.
Tiny houses.
That's what I'm seeing. And actually, when you're talking about 3 units on one property, there's a fellow who was on our show at one point, and he talked about how people can turn their house that might have a suite on the front, on the top, suite on the bottom, and turn the garage into a third unit. So you're not changing the footprint of a house. So that was the first I'd heard of that. So I mean, it's interesting how everyone's coping. But yes, good to hear.
And just in Edmonton, like I said, they're leading the way. So on a corner lot, 50 by 120, let's say, you can tear down that old house and put an 8-plex. So basically, you're going to turn it sideways, so the entrance is to the side road. But you're going to have 4 2-story townhouses side by side above, and 4 suited basements with a 4-car garage. So again, from one family enjoys that property now, and 8 can in the future now. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just don't want to manage them.
I God bless. Some people want to keep it. I'd certainly prefer managing here in Alberta than Ontario. That's for sure.
Oh,
yes, or BC.
Yeah. I was at the Ontario Landlords Watch conference. Where was I? October of 2022.
Yeah.
And they were asking me, so at the end of a fixed term lease, what do you do? I said, the tenant leaves. They're like, what? And all these people were coming and asking about real estate in Alberta. It was kind of funny. Yeah. Okay. So you have an online course. Tell us about your online course.
Yeah. So again, it was a result of me. So I was doing a lot of mentoring in the land development, new construction world, and everybody's asking the same questions. So I created an online course. Start whenever you want. Take it at your own speed. It's about 15 hours of content, me explaining different things. So again, if you just want to move the needle and do some paperwork, you can make a profit doing that. If you want to do the land preparation bit, I'll teach you how to do that. If you physically want to build, we can do that too. So really good information. 3 to 4 hours will get you up and running. And then we've got a closed Facebook group. We were just, last month, we passed over the 200 student mark. So we've got 200 students all over North America. That's a really great size and network. So now they're learning together, as we saw. They're investing together. One guy, they're starting to do stuff now. So one guy, as we talked about Vancouver Island, he's bought land and he's in the development permit application stage with the city to build a 70-unit apartment. So if you wanted to build a larger apartment, you're not just leaning on me now. You can also access other people in the network, in the group, and go for lunch with them and pick their brain for a bit too. And then we've got, if you do need a little bit more hand-holding, every 2 months, we start a 5-week session with me directly where I kind of take the newbies and get them going and get them up to speed. This is what you really need to know. And the goal is that they're making their first offer in the first 5 weeks. And then as you go along and you're more progressed, every week we've got an hour of Q&A, which again, you've got questions or you're working on a project, specific answers, again, direct access to me. So lots of direct access and really good value for the value of the course.
So a couple of things I like about that. Firstly, I like the hand-holding part, because whenever you start anything new, you don't want to be thrown out on your own. Right. And I've taken quite a few real estate courses, and there's always the point where you have to jump off the diving board. That's really pretty scary, and you want to know what's there for me, and kind of talk to somebody afterwards. And you don't want to have to wait for 2 months until a new class has started to actually talk to the instructor. Yeah. So that's really helpful that you've got direct access, which is great. Also, a lot of times you don't want to go in on something on your own. So it's really nice. I've been watching a lot of Darcy's videos where he interviews the students, and a lot of the students have really good successes by partnering with each other. So they hadn't anticipated doing that when they took the class, but then they started talking to people and they realized they had a match, and then they started doing great things, like the people who did the 24-story apartment building. They decided to join forces, and look what they're doing. And these are not experienced people who have done building before. These are newbies, right?
So there's another students group. One person's in Yellowknife, another person's in Ontario, and kind of the boots on the ground is here in Calgary, and they found an old house here in Calgary. They're going to knock down and they're going to build an 8-suiter. And so you've got that all across the country kind of chiming in. So that's
great too, because you might not necessarily connect with people in your near vicinity, but maybe connect with other people throughout North America. So it's good to know you've got other options.
And the other thing too is I was a lone wolf all my investing career. I just had to do everything. You know, I always had engineers doing stuff, but the actual finding and on-site supervisor, I did everything right. And I realized the errors of my ways later in life. So I really encourage people to join the course as a twosome, husband and wife, or business partner, or golfing buddy, whatever, or whatever, whatever. Like, so, and it's the same price, like a 2-for-1. So, because I think there's real value there. You know, you're strong where I'm weak, and vice versa. We can, you know, I love the hunt. I love finding the properties. I love being creative and designing them. I did the on-site super thing myself, and I was okay, but not great at it. I would have been much better to have somebody better at operations. You take care of that, and I'll just find the next. And so, yeah, 2-for-1 on that. It's I really encourage that.
So what I'll do is Darcy very nicely sent me a link to his course. And so I will post that on the backlinks of the YouTube video, and I'll also post it on Facebook tomorrow morning. So for those of you who are watching, don't worry if you don't see the link right now, it'll come up tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And then, the high level overview of the course is, in a nutshell,
online. Start when you want, take when you want. There's about 15 hours of video, but you'll get up to speed and actually start looking for stuff in 3 hours. We've also got 5 hours direct with me at the beginning, kind of hand holding, and then an hour a week after that for whatever questions you have. Unlimited lifetime access, so there's no stops in a year. We've got a really great network and community that we're building, as we've talked about. And so it's really, really great value. So if you want to get into this, if you're real serious about development, then you need this course. It's a really, really great place to start.
That sounds excellent. So my last question, who is the course designed to help? You might have answered that already. It's designed to help you. You don't need any help, Darcy. Get out of the picture already.
But me when at various stages of the last 20 years. So you're tired, you're bored, you're frustrated with the existing flip and rental world. It's just not working for you for whatever reason. You've had a dream about maybe doing something else and growing as a person, as an investor. You want to deal with new. You want to start with a blank slate. You want to be creative. You want to feel the pride when you actually finish that sixplex or whatever, that project from beginning to end. I can tell you, like I said, I dealt with nasty. I dealt with new. New's better, but the sense of pride you feel when you build something versus the pride you feel when you renovate in 1930s were indescribable too, right? I really want everybody to experience that at least once in their life.
I can speak to that because I did build a house, and it's an incredibly profound experience.
When you're done, you stand back. So I did this, and we took the tour yesterday, and you saw my villa project. So 7 acres, 36 units. I did everything right from. It was greenfield, so we had to get the earth movers in and move the dirt around, put the pipe in the ground, internal roads, build the houses. I did everything. Even today, like 12 years, 13 years later, I drive through that, and I still get the greatest sense of pride to know that I did this. Like,
yes, you should, because that is a gargantuan undertaking.
Yeah. This exists on the planet because I did it, because I took a chance and wanted to see if I could do it. And I did.
36 people have beautiful homes because of the work you did.
Yeah.
So I didn't think this was possible either. A number of years ago, I worked for Calgary Economic Development, and I dealt with people. There was a fellow I dealt with who designed a system. It's called microengineering technology, and so they wanted to design a system where they'd be able to build over top of the subway systems in the downtown core, specifically the Bow Building, without destroying everything around it, without it falling apart. And so he developed a system that monitored frequency of vibration. And I said, it must give you a great feeling of pride to drive past these buildings and realize that you had an absolutely critical part in building. Like, this downtown landscape would not look like this had you not have developed that tool. And he said, yes, it does. And I said, because I drive past them and I feel proud that you did that. But I never thought I would think about building development. But since watching your first video, I thought, yeah, that sounds really pretty interesting, And
it's doable. You can do this. It is, like I said, it's not just for the big guys. Just take it down to our size, one old house on a city lot. There's so many things we can do with that as small investors, regular investors, that you can it'll transform your life. If you're feeling stuck with the existing flips and rental world, this is a brave new world, and we can all profit from it.
Change your life.
Change your life.
Shifting your perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, I will include Darcy Marhler's link to his course on the backlink and also in my Facebook group. And I would like to thank you very much, Darcy, for joining us on this program and sharing this really interesting and fantastic building development with us, because something a lot of people hadn't heard of. I hadn't heard of until I was on a real estate forum where you were speaking, and I kind of put my antenna up at that point.
Yeah.
And Darcy also took Gil and I on a tour of some of the building developments, and he started getting us to look at buildings from the front and the sides and
In a different way.
in a different way. So yeah, and I do look at buildings differently now. I start looking at on a street, what's new and what's old in between, and what looks like it's ready to fall apart. And so it really it's sort of like, I watched a TV show many years ago where this guy decided he was going to sell Volkswagens, and all of a sudden he's seeing Volkswagens everywhere. This is like, I'm thinking about building development, I'm seeing old houses everywhere and opportunities everywhere.
Right. And you'll see that too. It is exactly like, because psychologically we want to make sure that we made the right decision about that car. So we start seeing that car everywhere. Same thing here. You'll start to see development opportunities all the time. And you never noticed them before, but they were there. So.
Yeah, and all of a sudden they jump out. So kudos to you for offering the course, for sharing all of this wonderful information for free.
Yeah.
And the course isn't free, of course, but I wouldn't expect it to be. But anyway, if you're interested in Darcy's course, as mentioned, it'll be on a backlink. And if you liked this program, please like it, and please share and subscribe to my YouTube channel, albertalandlordswatch.com. And of course, buy my book. Because if you own rental properties, that's something you need to know. You need to know how to manage them so that you can turn it over to somebody else and have your Christmas and New Year's free. So thanks again, Darcy, for joining us. And thank you, Gil.
Thanks, Darcy, for the tour yesterday. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was an awesome tour.
And just to your audience there too, if you're in Calgary and you want to take the same tour, just DM me, and I'm happy to do it. Like, it's just one-on-one. It takes about an hour and a half, and you'll get to pick my brain one-on-one for a bit. So, and I love doing it. So yeah, feel free.
Thanks again, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. I really appreciate this. Bye-bye.